New year, new gear. Thousands of fresh active styles are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Save on top brands like Nike, Puma, and Free People, starting at just $35.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Plus, join the Nordy Club to shop new arrivals first. Unlock exclusive discounts and more. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
This podcast is supported by Talkspace.
When my husband came home from his military deployment, readjusting was hard for all of us. Thankfully, I found Talkspace.
Talkspace provides professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatric providers online. Military members, veterans, and their dependents ages 13 and older can get fast access to providers, all from the privacy of their computers or smartphones.
I just answered a few questions online, and Talkspace matched me with a therapist. We meet when it's convenient for me, and I can message her anytime. It was so easy to set up, and they accept TRICARE. Therapy was going so well, my husband and I started seeing a couples therapist through Talkspace too.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, including TRICARE. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com/military. Go to Talkspace.com/military to get started today. That's Talkspace.com/military.
Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. This morning, I listened to the President of the United States speaking to the world at the Economic Summit in Switzerland. I listened with great care and with growing distress. This is the second day in a row when the president has given a rambling discourse, and it didn't reassure anyone. In fact, the fourth time he referred to Greenland as Iceland, I thought to myself, what in the world is he doing? Has he lost it completely? And I want to be clear, I am critical of Donald Trump. No doubt about it. There are policy differences that I have with this president that I've discussed many, many times with you on this podcast. But what I heard yesterday and what I heard today disturbs me profoundly. And I hope it disturbs you as well. We have a president of the United States who, at least today, said he would not use force to seize Greenland, but who insulted our allies, some heads of state by name, and who proved himself to be absolutely a disaster on the world stage. Not only that, he repeated things that simply are not true. He did not win the election of 2020. The American electorate did not embrace Donald Trump. And now he talks about pending legal action against those over the 2020 election. My friends, I say this with some sadness. This president, there's something wrong. There's something wrong emotionally. There's something wrong in terms of his logic. There's something wrong in terms of his demeanor. I was horrified yesterday and today by his rambling discourse. And you can go down the list of various issues which he raised, all of which he got wrong. And by the way, the idea that NATO is useless is ridiculous. The idea that he would say he is the president who has done more for NATO than any other president is nonsense. You know it, I know it. And believe me, what scares me most is the people who listened to him this morning, in person and through the wonder of television, know how wrong he is. So there is a question. Do you trust the judgment of the President of the United States? Now, let me draw a difference here, if I can, and I think it's an important difference, between disagreeing on policy and disagreeing with the way he interprets things. When the President of the United States stands before the world at an economic summit and doesn't talk about economy, doesn't talk about the issues that he should have addressed, that could concern us all. And when he basically gives his stump speech, the same speech over and over again in a rambling style, I think we really have to take a look at what he's doing. Now, I am concerned about the Republicans in the United States Senate and the House of Representatives. How can they stand by and watch what is happening? How can they not raise their voices? And believe me, if Joe Biden had given this kind of speech, Republicans would have raised the suggestion that perhaps Joe Biden was not fit to be president. Well, I am raising this question with you, legitimately. Is this president fit to be president? And the answer is no. I think it's clear. This morning, before I recorded this particular podcast, I spoke with a group of people who are Trump supporters, all of whom expressed their support for his policies, but real concern about who Donald Trump is becoming. I raise this because I've talked about the 25th Amendment, which can only be invoked, in my judgment, in the most catastrophic situation. We've talked about impeachment, which is not practical or possible. And yet I read the story in the New York Times, which points out that Donald Trump and his family in the last 12 months have enriched themselves by more than, are you ready for this? More than $1 billion. That's right. 1.3 or 1.4 billion are some estimates, and yet this kind of corruption goes unchallenged. The President of the United States has turned the Justice Department loose against elected public officials in Minnesota. The Justice Department has been weaponized in order to go after these people. And I have to tell you, that is a violation of every principle of the American presidency. This president has an enemies list. This president is weaponizing the Justice Department. This president goes to Davos and doesn't give a talk on the economy, but rather rehashes all the same old nonsense. At what point do we say the emperor has no clothes? At what point do we stand up and say there is something seriously wrong? If I were J.D. Vance, I'd be considering the genuine possibility that at some point, in order to be creditable, he will have to distance himself from Donald Trump. And yet, the vice president is doing exactly what a vice president should do, being loyal, being quiet, being discreet. But what I heard yesterday and what I heard today calls to question, in my mind, whether or not this president is balanced or unbalanced. There is another point here that I think is very important. No president should make policy based on personal feelings. You may have personal feelings, you may talk about them privately, but not publicly. Did you hear the president today insult Macron, the president of France? Did you hear him insult NATO as an organization? Did you hear the language he used? I must tell you, there is something deeply disturbing, deeply wrong. And the only way to put a check on this is the Congress. Now, there is another vehicle, and that is the Supreme Court. This morning, before the court, an argument was raised about whether or not the president can remove someone on the Fed. And the answer seems to me, based on comments made during the oral arguments, that the court is going to rule against Donald Trump. And the question is, what will the court do on tariffs? Will they rule against him on tariffs? And what does it mean for Donald Trump, who believes, as do his aides, in a unitary presidency. What it means, my friends, very directly is we have a problem with the President of the United States. And this, my friends, can only be addressed by Congress and the Supreme Court in putting limits on what a president can or cannot do. This concerns me because I am a believer in the American system. We've talked about that. I believe strongly that what holds our country together is the fact that we have documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, which ensure a balance of power. But this president does not care about the balance of power, does not care about co-equal branches of government, is prepared to rule essentially as he wishes. So there are only two checks that we have on a president who is out of control, and I believe this president is out of control. The first is the Congress, and the Republicans in the House and Senate are going to be held accountable. They must be held accountable because what they have done is refuse to stand up even to defend their own institutions. And the Supreme Court, I'm waiting for their ruling on tariffs, and yes, on whether the president can unilaterally remove someone from the Fed. I'm waiting for all of this because unless our institutions reach the proper conclusions, we have a problem with the way America functions. Can you imagine, and I want you to think, about what the European leaders and those in Davos who sat and listened to this president, what they must be thinking? No wonder they are speaking about alliances beyond the United States. Because if they are reliant on the rational thinking and judgment of this president, it's over. We need to reassure our allies. And I don't know whether Donald Trump is capable of doing that. In fact, I don't think he is. Now, I want to be very clear. This is not a question of whether you like Donald Trump's policies or not. It's not even a question of whether you like Donald Trump as a human being or not. It is a question of how this president is representing the United States of America. And yes, how he is abusing his power. And I believe he is. May I ask you what you think when the Justice Department is set loose on elected public officials in Minnesota? You understand this wouldn't be happening were not the President of the United States insisting that this happen. And I think therein lies the rub. I believe strongly in the constitutional balances which have preserved this republic. We saw those balances tested to the extreme at the height of the Watergate scandal involving Richard Nixon. And yet, the Congress worked, the courts worked, the press worked, everything worked. And that is how we were spared a constitutional crisis of massive proportion. I believe with all my heart that what we face now is a danger greater than Watergate. What is the great sin that is being committed today? The sin of silence. I believe very strongly, and I've said it before and I will say it no doubt again in these podcasts, that those who have acquiesced to what Donald Trump is doing will be held accountable. How does the Republican Party rebuild? Really, how do they rebuild their credibility? The leadership of the Republican Party in the House and Senate. How will they face the American people? And look at the polls. Now, polls don't mean much. I understand that. The only poll that counts is on Election Day. But I believe very strongly that on Election Day, although Donald Trump is not on the ballot, his policies will be repudiated overwhelmingly by the American people. Some people ask, well, what do the Democrats offer? I would remind you of a statement I've made many times. Sometimes the American people don't vote for, they vote against. And I believe that the mounting concern about Donald Trump can only grow. There are many subjects which I would like to discuss. And I had an email from a listener who said, "Why do you always talk about Trump?" And the answer is because what Trump is doing, what he says, is central to the way we relate to our own country and to the world. If what the president said this morning is any example, if what he said yesterday in his rambling statement, if these statements mean anything, it shows from a rational point of view the irrationality of this president and of this moment. My friends, no doubt there will be much analysis, and I believe a lot of it is going to be interesting to listen to, particularly from the Republican side of the aisle. But I will tell you personally, I believe there is no excuse. We have a serious problem with this president, and by God, we've got to address it. I haven't talked about Vice President Vance yet, but let me remind you, if anything happens to Donald Trump, Vance will be president. And there are real concerns on that level as well. I thank you for indulging me today. I believe these issues centered on the President of the United States represent an existential threat, and I hope we address it. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, drop a comment on YouTube or Spotify, click any of the links to the show notes to connect with me on social media. Please share this episode. Share our concerns. And remember, only by sharing with a friend or colleague can we continue to grow and expand, which is what we want to do. This show has been getting so much positive attention that we're excited to bring on advertising support. This helps us create more interest, but your spreading the word really does it. And to Gogo Zoder, the wonderful producer of this program, Gogo, thank you for being so patient and making sure we're up and running every single day. I am John Rothman. I'll be back tomorrow, right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.